to express that truth, be able to show up as our most authentic selves, even in a world that isn't moving that way. Hi, my friends. Perspective here is happening on a different plane, and that's truly the only way that transmutation can occur. Transmutation cannot occur on the same plane. You cannot try to convert, an emotion that someone has passed on to you to a positive emotion by just trying to be happy. No, you have to zoom into what is causing the unhappiness, observe that closely, and then tweak it based off your own journey, because again, everyone is on their own different journey, and until you actively are aware of your patterns, until you start excavating your patterns, you can't really tweak, you can't really see the effect that you desire. And the effect is only going to be to a certain degree. Again, polarity is two polar ends with varying degrees across. It's only going to be to a certain degree, right? And the more you strengthen your awareness of self, your concept of self, solidify those thoughts with actions, and keep repeating that to reprogram yourself, the more the degree that you're tilting towards in the higher vibration or the lower vibration, or the more liberating thoughts and the lower thoughts. But all of that to say, transmutation truly occurs across the different planes. However, it has to be within the same context. So you cannot transmute from one circumstance to another circumstance, except those circumstances are closely related, except there is an underlying thread that correlates them. You can't necessarily go from one thing to the other thing. And to be as effective as possible in transmutation, then you already have your hands full with one thing. So yes, within the same context, gets the job done. You want to ensure that, okay, yeah, we're focusing on this circumstance and we're not trying to transmute from poverty to freedom, right? Yes, being abundant could give you a level of freedom, but again, you just have to be as aware as possible and as specific as possible. We're able to bring all these concepts together: the vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, to transmutation, and reminding us that we have the power to choose. And once we choose, the thoughts that we allow or give permission to fester in our minds, we are accountable for those thoughts. And as we are aware of those thoughts, as we actively choose those thoughts, to either keep being in that headspace or to choose being somewhere else and a freer, higher vibrational thought, that would directly affect the emotions and how we feel about that experience. Cause and effect, transmutation, all points to action. Everything has to end as an action. That's the whole gist. But you do realize that at the end of the day, it's like a loop. Because after acting out, that action reinforces your belief system, that solidifies it. So even the thought itself doesn't end up until it's an action. And because of the very action, it loops back into a belief system, a stronger belief system. But all that to say, it's more of a cycle than it is, like a forward flow. It's just like a cycle of life, and you keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Say for instance, you're in an altercation or interaction with someone that you're connected to. This is a connection that had lasted for the most part whilst you were in that wounded phase. So the tendency for there to be triggering of that shadow self is very high. Now you're in this interaction, and for some reason, the person gives their opinion about something. Prior to that, you were so set on what you wanted to do, you were certain about what you wanted to do. But having interacted with this person, they say something, whatever that might be, and you find yourself leaning into that shadow aspect and then having your opinion changed. Now, what you wanted to do, you no longer plan on doing that. And that, let's even forget about the action self. Let's leave that aside. But that interaction, you were happy, you were certain, sure of yourself. Post interaction, you're sad. First, the person's opinion changed your own opinion. The person's opinion became a cause. The effect is your change in opinion, right? You can see it that way. Cause and effect on the same plane, being the mental plane, the mental level, their opinion versus your own thoughts, which are on the mental plane. You could also see that the person's opinion cost you within the context, within the plane of your own opinion. Now let's focus on your opinion. What's happening? Within your opinion, we have doubt, we have certainty, right? Doubt is one pole, certainty is the other pole. So you, prior to this conversation, were on the certain end of the pole. Post this conversation, that pendulum swung from the certainty to the doubt. Now, that swing, which you could also see as an effect, these are just words. The most important thing is getting the gist. That swing that caused you to doubt, the swing from certainty to doubt, that becomes the cause. Effect, sadness. Because all of a sudden, the thing that you wanted to do, the truth that you held so closely, is tweaking for you. You're sad. In that case, sadness, which is the emotion, is a resultant effect of doubt, which is the mental thought. Having thoughts of doubt and uncertainty. If we want to use that transmutation technique here, we know the best way to go about this is to take it backward into the higher plane, which is the mental plane, and then work from there. So we have our emotion as sadness. We don't want to be sad again, Abby. So we have to go back to the mental plane and reassure ourselves because we're being doubtful, right? We no longer are certain. Finding a way to reaffirm these things to ourselves. It is having thoughts that are in line with our truth. And if this comes up for me and I'm feeling doubtful, I would see this as okay, this is an opportunity for me to remind myself of my truth. I understand, I acknowledge that this person may not be on this journey with me. They are not me. They have not experienced things that I've experienced, so they may not know. Now, why do I even hold that truth so strongly? And this is where embodiment comes because at the end of the day, you have to feel the thing that you say that you are. It's not just about saying it. It's not just about thinking it. It's not just about having a feeling. It's everything ending up as action and how you show up. And the more that you act, the more these narratives feel real because you're not just gonna think about it. You're thinking about something and you're holding on to that because that would end up being what you do. So then when you think about it the next time, it's not just a thought, it's a truth because that has changed from just being information somewhere that someone has said to you actually moving in that direction and seeing the result of that for your own self. So, in my experience, the more I solidified things for myself, the more I acted in accordance with the things that I believed, right? It no longer belief, it converted to a truth. And so the more these instances come up, the more they can become an opportunity for us to ask ourselves, like, what is true for us? You observe that the I comes up and you can ask, is this my truth or not? Because everyone's, in quotes, truth or opinion, it really is a suggestion. And that's it. It really is a suggestion. Because not until I try it for myself and I see how it plays out in my own unique use case can I now say, okay, this is what's true for me. And then that goes back into the certainty. And why would tomorrow, if I step out and interact with someone and they say something, what are the tendencies for it to shift from my truth to a false thing or a certainty to doubt? What are the tendencies and to what degree? Because again, these are varying degrees, right? It's not just like, oh, something is going to go from being untrue to being true, or you being sure about certain stories that you're telling yourself or narratives, that being your truth versus, it not being. It's not like it's going to be going from one extreme to the other. It really is varying degrees within that. And as we evolve, I believe it does shed light to the idea of the varying degrees. Like, you see how every level just exposes how varied the degrees are, because over and over again you experience new versions and like the degrees increase or decrease and you find your sweet spot. And that's the whole point, right? So when you start to embody these lessons and treat life like your lab and just run experiments, you have proof, you have tangible proof, you have evidence. And so these no longer become beliefs for you, right? It's solidified, it's your truth, it's something because you've taken it from a mental capacity on the mental plane to the physical plane. And that's full circle. I was also going to talk about how, like, with embodiment, and that's why varying degrees are such a thing, because you're not going to start out at your destination. It's a journey. You're always going to keep going on this journey and finding new things out, and just within the varying degrees. So, what worked for me, being able to ease into it, right? And starting out